terrifying night of hidden nightmares. When the cursed Appalachian Bigfoot exposed our checkpoint, Clara was filled with dread as she exited the hospital, the moonless sky swallowing the last bit of daylight. The townsfolk whispered about the cursed Appalachian Bigfoot, a creature that thrived on fear and misery, especially in the dark. Tonight, their lullabies felt closer than ever. Clara clenched her fists, forcefully pushing aside the ever-present fear that gripped her heart. But something sinister felt alive in the air, buzzing like an electric current. Shadows danced unnaturally around her, the familiar sounds of chirping crickets faded into a haunting silence that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She remembered leaving her children at the community center, their smiling faces brightening the dim mood she carried. But tonight, isolation smothered her. Voices emerged from the darkness, whispers brushing against her skin like fingers, and with every step she took, the air thickened. It was as if Pine Hollow were clenching its jaws, drawing her deeper into its secretive embrace. What unnerved her most was the silence that had enveloped the town in the wake of recent disappearances. Families, once neighbors she waved to across the street, vanished without a trace. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the townspeople were hiding something, maybe even colluding with the shadows they feared. As her heart raced, she bit her lip, trying to convince herself it was only the weight of her responsibilities weighing down on her. Yet, it felt much deeper than that. Stumbling through the thickening thicket of trees, she gripped her flashlight tightly, the beam slicing through the inky void around her. Clara felt the old stories tugging at her, grotesque tales of a Bigfoot that haunted the Appalachian woods, growing gluttonous on the grief of families. Just old country folk tales, the deputies had scoffed earlier when she reported her fears. But were they truly just tales? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night pressed down on Clara like a suffocating blanket. She trudged further into the forest, leaving the fragile feel of consideration behind as she sought to unearth Pine Hollow's whispers. Suddenly an echo. Children's laughter bounced between the trees, sending chills down her spine. The laughter was so eerily familiar, yet she knew that it wasn't a memory, it was a nightmare unspooling in front of her. Cold sweat beaded along her brow as flashes of flickering light appeared and vanished among the branches, shadows sliding behind trees like they were alive. Each crack underfoot jolted her nerves, reminding her of the stories woven into the fabric of town lore. And then she saw them, figures dancing just out of reach, a meeting of shadowed forms near a clearing. Her heart raced. A clergyman, beloved by Pine Hollow, stood entwined in the embrace of darkness, murmuring incantations to something unseen. Fear twisted around her like a vice, squeezing harder as the truth popped through her thoughts. Tonight, she wasn't just battling the wilderness, she was contending with the very heart of a town cloaked in fear. The sinister essence of the woods wrapped around her, and with every breath, Clara felt time slipping, leaving her with a choice. Confront the terror that lurked behind laughter or succumb to the shadows whispering that it was time to let go. Clara's heart thudded, drowning out the laughter echoing through the trees. It felt wrong, tainted. She took a shaky step forward, but her instincts screamed at her to run. The figures, now swirling in their dance, exuded a malevolent energy that made her skin crawl. The clergyman's voice rose and fell, layering the laughter in a disconcerting chorus of delight mingled with dread. "What have you done?" Clara whispered to herself, her breath coming in short gasps. The clearing opened wider before her, the frantic light flickering from a fire that hunched low, hiding the details of the ritual unfolding. As if sensing her presence, the figures stopped. Every head turned in unison, their faces masked in shadows but their eyes glimmered with a knowing glint. Panic seared through her veins. She felt the heat of their stares, probing, dissecting her very essence. "Clara," a voice echoed, smooth yet filled with malice. It was the clergyman, a figure of comfort turned sinister. "You sought the truth. Now you shall witness it. Before she could respond, the clergyman raised his arm skyward, and the laughter transformed into something darker, an unholy chant that swirled through the woods like icy fingers. Shadows thickened around him, curling into shapes creatures she didn't recognize, grotesque and beastly. They seemed woven from the very fabric of the night, merging with the whispers of the woods. Clara stumbled backward, breath hitching. Memories flashed, a family picture on the wall, her children holding hands at the community center, the warmth of home. Was this the price of knowing too much? Her gut twisted as she realized the awful truth. They were not just chanting for power. No, they were summoning something. The laughter bubbled up again, this time laced with a hard edge that felt like claws scraping against her sanity. Deep in the forest, she could sense the presence of the Appalachian Bigfoot, a monster feasting on their suffering, waiting to be called forth. With a surge of adrenaline, legs trembling, Clara wanted nothing more than to flee. Yet, she couldn't look away from the horrific spectacle unfolding. The air was thick with yearning, thick like molasses, binding her to the ground, a primal urge to confront the darkness. Your fear feeds it. The clergyman yelled, voice booming through the trees. Embrace it. Join us. And then the chanting shifted, spiraling into a crescendo that rattled the core of her being. Shadows coalesced behind him, hemmed in tight, ready to emerge into the realm of the living. Clara felt the pull, her mind a battlefield, an unholy fusion of terror and morbid curiosity. Stop! She screamed, though her voice trembled on the precipice of despair. She didn't understand what she was asking, but it was too late to turn back now. The energy crackled, her survival instincts warring against the chilling allure of the dark promise hanging heavy in the air. Then, silence, a breathless pause enveloped the clearing, and the eyes watching her flickered with uncertainty. Clara felt that strange pulse of power shift, an unstable equilibrium teetering on the edge of release. Was this the moment she could disrupt whatever twisted bond had formed? Before she could comprehend her next move, the ground beneath her trembled like the heartbeat of the forest itself. The laughter evaporated into gasps, and Clara felt the air grow colder, as if the wraiths of the past were awakening. In that paralyzing moment, with shadows undulating behind the clergyman, she knew she had stumbled upon something grotesque. But would she find courage to stand firm, or would fear guide her into the depths? As shadows rippled closer, Clara stood frozen, the forest around her roaring to life, but what she didn't know was that she was not the only one who had been drawn into the clutches of horror. Clara's breath quickened as the ground continued to shake beneath her. The once inviting forest had transformed into a malignant entity, reeking of decay and despair. Shadows danced with a life of their own, reaching toward her with clawed hands that shimmered and wavered like smoke. Clara! The clergyman's voice sliced through the stillness, echoing, snaking around her mind. You have a choice. Fear or power. Engage or retreat. The eyes of the grotesque forms behind him glowed brighter, hungry for something: her submission, her sanity. A low growl rumbled in the depths of the surrounding woods, deep and resonant, sending a jolt of terror through her veins. It was a sound as old as the mountains and thick with malice. Then, from the forest's edge, emerged another shadow, lumbering and massive. The creature was like nothing Clara had ever seen. Hair matted and dark as the abyss, it stepped into the dim light, muscles rippling under its tangles of fur. The Appalachian Bigfoot. It was a nightmarish vision, panic rising as it surveyed the clearing with a hungry gaze. Look! The clergyman shouted, his eyes glinting with feverish excitement. It comes to feast on the power we have called. The chanting intensified, an incantation warped with rage and need. Clara felt the invisible chains binding her to this cursed place tighten. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, a frantic wish for this to be a twisted nightmare, but darkness seeped in around her vision instead. Clara! A voice broke through. It wasn't he from the cultists or the beast, but something within the shadows. Fight! You are not alone. She opened her eyes to catch a glimpse of another figure, a fleeting silhouette moving through the trees. It seemed familiar, a misguided beam of hope piercing the murky dread, but the clergyman noticed too. Don't listen to them. He screamed, arms flailing as he tried to quell her wavering resolve. They seek to lead you astray. Come. Join us now. The Bigfoot growled deeper, shaking the earth with its presence. Clara teetered on the precipice of choice. A primal force swirled inside her, urging her to flee, yet another part ached for the thrill of defiance. Clara. The voice called again. Trust your instinct. Remember why you came here. Panic ignited memories, the warmth of her children's laughter grounding her to reality. They were her tether, her reason, but she had to act quickly before the darkness consumed her whole. With a sudden surge of determination, Clara stomped her foot into the loamy earth. Leave me alone. She shouted, her voice rising defiantly above the chaos. I refuse to be your pawn. Suddenly, the chanting faltered, the figures around the fire hesitating, confusion spreading through the crowd. The clergyman's eyes flared with rage, and his face twisted into a mask of fury. No. He thundered. You will join us. You will pay for your defiance with your sanity. A chill swept through the clearing as the shadows writhed, hungry to reclaim their prize. The ground vibrated beneath Clara as if her refusal sent shockwaves through the looming darkness. She realized in that moment, whatever force was rising now craved not just power, but a sacrifice it hungered for her. Specifically, with a jolt, the Bigfoot lunged, ripping through the darkness toward her, and the clergyman roared in outrage as the circle around the fire collapsed. Clara's heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat in the chest of a prey. She turned and ran, blinding terror propelling her feet across the forest floor, branches clawing at her skin. Would the creature choose her over the clergyman's madness? Was her escape even possible? As she sprinted deeper into the woods, a question emerged. Was this the start of her fight or the end of her sanity? Clara dared not look back, knowing horrors lurked behind her. But the pulse of the forest quickened, and somewhere ahead, she sensed the unmistakable pulse of something ancient, something watching. Clara's feet pounded against the ground, her breath turning ragged as she plunged deeper into the dark embrace of the trees. Every twisted trunk and gnarled root seemed to conspire against her, reaching out like skeletal fingers, but she wouldn't give in. The Bigfoot's growl vibrated in the air, a primordial sound, both a warning and a promise of carnage. Keep moving, she urged herself, adrenaline spurring her on. Her heart hammered in her chest, keeping time with the growing thrumming of the forest around her. The shadows were losing coherence, swirling like they were alive, preparing to lunge at her heels. Just ahead, the silhouette danced again, flickering between the trees. Whoever or whatever it was beckoning her closer. Clara's pulse raced. She could follow it, or she could risk the devilish miasma of the clergyman's followers. The choice was made as she sprinted toward the figure, desperation twisting her gut. As she neared the edge of a small clearing, the silhouette resolved into a wild-haired woman, her clothes torn and dirty, face smeared with dirt. Clara almost stopped, recognition hit her like a blow. It was Martha, a local woman who'd gone missing months ago. Bile rose in Clara's throat at the sight of the haunted look in her eyes. Martha! Clara called, her voice cracking. What happened to you? The woman leaned closer, frightful urgency in her tone. They took me. The clergyman and his followers, they've been summoning things they can't control. Her hands trembled as she gestured wildly. You mustn't let them catch you. They'll use you, like they tried to use me. Clara's stomach twisted, a knot of dread tightening. The chanting from the fire behind her had vanished, giving way to a cacophony of growls and hisses echoing through the trees. The Bigfoot was closer now, its massive form gliding through the shadows. Clara, we have to go. Martha urged, breaking Clara from her paralyzed fear. She stepped back, looking into the distance where the forest thickened. There are more like me, people taken. We're remnants of their hunger, and they'll stop at nothing to gather to feed. Feed? Clara couldn't fathom it, piecing together the horror in her mind while trying to steady her breath. The clergyman was right about one thing, this was a dark power, shifting, waiting for a sacrifice, and it craved human souls. A low rumble rumbled through the ground again, and Clara stumbled forward as the Bigfoot pushed through the underbrush. Its glowing eyes locked onto her, malevolence simmering just beneath the surface. Panic clawed at her throat. "Martha, we need to run," Clara urged again. Instead, Martha shook her head, fear gripping her face. "It's too late," she whispered, her eyes widening. "You need to accept. Embrace it." "No." Clara's scream ripped through the air, backed by her will to resist, to not become another lost soul. But as she turned to flee, the ground lurched beneath her, a sudden quake casting her off balance. She stumbled, caught by a tree's web of roots that snagged at her feet. Around her, shadows thickened, dark and clawing, curling toward her like smoke, sinking their presence deeper into the forest floor. Behind her, the echoes of a sinister chant rose, low and heavy with intent. The clergyman's voice could be heard echoing, "Join us, Clara. Return to the fold." The forest closed in, each tree leaning closer, and Clara realized they were not just watching, they were waiting, ready to engulf her holy body and soul. She had to choose, and fast. Would she embrace the power they offered, or fight it until her last breath? The tightening grip of the shadows and the Bigfoot's hungry gaze left little room for hesitation. Fight or succumb? She cried out, a plea echoing in the emptiness, answering nothing but the silence of the abyss. But then, through the darkness, she caught sight of a flickering light deep within the forest, a beacon of hope, or perhaps another trap. Clara's fingers grasped at the roots. "Do I live or die?" she thought. The forest seemed to breathe heavily, and she could feel it waiting. What would she decide? She closed her eyes, praying for courage as uncertainty loomed like a nefarious shadow. And as she finally broke free and dashed toward the pulsing light, Clara knew the night had only just begun. Clara lunged forward, propelled by a mix of fear and hope. Each frantic step toward the light felt like an act of defiance against the suffocating darkness that clawed at her consciousness. The silhouettes that once felt alive now appeared to whisper her name, urging her back into their obsidian depths. "Stay strong," she muttered to herself, feeling the familiar tremor in her hands as she ran. The flickering light grew brighter, revealing a narrow path flanked by twisted trees. Their shadows, jagged and elongated, seemed to sway like sinister dancers. Footsteps echoed behind her, a heavy thump followed by a hungry growl. The Bigfoot was pursuing her, its breath of foul wind across the back of her neck. "Keep moving." The forest coiled tighter around her, but Clara was blinded by the urgency to escape. As she sprinted, an earth-shattering roar erupted just behind her, sending a jolt of pure terror through her veins. The very ground seemed to shake in recognition of the creature, and she cursed the roots that snagged her ankles like the tendrils of some unseen beast. Closer now, the light revealed itself, a small cabin, nestled amidst the chaos. It stood sturdy against the forces of the woods, with wooden walls weathered and forgotten, yet a warm light glowed from within, as inviting as it was unsettling. Torn by indecision, she hesitated, casting a glance over her shoulder. The trees trembled, and the growl grew deeper, closer. She could sense the predator just a few feet behind her, its hot breath a promise of doom. "Please, not now." Clara stumbled forward, reaching the cabin door. Slamming it shut, she turned the lock with trembling hands, the sound echoing like an alarm. Her heart raced as she heard the pounding against the wooden frame, the growl now like a foghorn, swirling menacingly around her. Inside, the warmth was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the frigid fear that clung to her skin. Faded photographs lined the walls. Faces of men and women with hollow eyes stared into the void of memories, each possessing an unsettling resemblance to Martha. Clara, the voice drifted from the darkness of the far side of the room. She froze, terror creeping back into her veins. "Martha?" Clara breathed, stepping closer to a figure wrapped in shadows. The soft light trembled, revealing gaunt features, hollowed cheeks, sunken eyes, devoid of life. It wasn't he, her friend, but the manifestation of what Martha had warned her about. "They serve the forest," the figure whispered, the breath cold as the night outside. You're trapped in its web, just like us. Clara's skin prickled with dread as she backed away. No. I want to be like you. The figure's laughter rang out, shrill and echoing. You already are. The darkness feeds on fear, love, and hope. It craves the very essence of what you are. And suddenly, the walls pulsated, growing warmer as shadows converged. It was as if the cabin itself was alive and consuming its surroundings. Clara darted to the window, but the once inviting light from outside turned a deep, oppressive black. The Bigfoot stood just beyond the threshold, its massive frame blotting out the last remnants of hope. "Join us, Clara," the voices chanted from the walls, a cacophony of despair and temptation. "Embrace it. You can't escape." Panic coursing through her body, Clara fumbled for another exit, but the dark entity encapsulated her, wrapping her in layers of shadows. "No!" she yelled, striking out as the darkness latched onto her limbs, pulling her closer to the wall. With one final push, she reached for the door, yanking it open, ready to confront the creature lurking outside. Clara mustered her strength, but the whispers wrapped around her, drawing her back into the sinister fold of despair, and just as her heart threatened to break beneath the weight of the shadows, a thought pierced through the horror: what if she could turn their hunger against them? Breathless, Clara stepped outside, facing the Bigfoot with determination burning in her eyes. "Not tonight!" she shouted, and the forest shuddered in response, leaving her to question could she summon the very power they craved? Did she dare to embrace the darkness in her fight for survival? With every heartbeat, the night hung heavy around her, taunting her choices, as the forest held its breath, waiting for Clara to make her next move. The Bigfoot loomed in the moonlight, its eyes glinting with an insatiable hunger. Clara's pulse quickened as the beast shifted its weight, the ground trembling beneath her feet. "Focus, Clara," she whispered, rallying her thoughts. The cabin's warmth faded into a distant memory, overridden by the heavy chill of night creeping back in. She had stepped outside, but the forest was now a living nightmare, a shroud of shadows eager to devour her. Embrace the darkness. The echo of the cabin's voices haunted her, wrapping around her senses like heavy fog, weighing her down. Clara gritted her teeth, willing her feet to move. The creature's growl echoed like a war drum, throbbing through the trees, through her chest. "What do I have to lose?" she yelled into the void, hands shaking. "You want me?" The Bigfoot reared back, jaw slackening, revealing teeth as jagged as shards of glass. Its growl morphed into a deep, resonating chuckle, a sound that vibrated through her bones. The creature stepped forward, a titan within the darkness. Clara felt small, insignificant. Yet now or never. She gathered every ounce of defiance she could muster. "I will not be like them." The desperate words spilled from her lips, igniting a flicker of bravery within. She took a step forward, the dry leaves crunching underfoot, a fragile echo of strength in the vast silence. Suddenly, the forest shifted as if sensing her resolve. The trees groaned and creaked, bending toward her like spectators at a macabre show. A gust of wind swept through, carrying with it whispers of lost souls, swirling around her. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, willing the eerie calls to fade. Then, she opened her eyes, a newfound clarity illuminating her mind. What if she began, realization dawning? What if I breathe in the fear? The dark power they desire. Clara took a deep breath, the cold air stinging her lungs. She thought of the shadows that had engulfed her, the hollow figures that lingered in the cabin. With each inhale, she imagined pulling their fear into her, transforming it into strength. The creature halted, its eyes narrowing with confusion. Clara felt a surge of willing energy, electric and raw. She lifted her chin, facing the beast. "You've been feeding on fear. Let me show you what true power is." With each heartbeat, darkness thrummed around her. Clara extended her arms, palms upward, drawing mystical forces from the shadows. The forest paused, holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. At that moment, something shifted deep within the woods. The shadows shuddered, pulling back, as if recoiling from a sudden light. The Bigfoot took a cautious step back, uncertainty dancing in its eyes. "Join me in this, and you'll see," she shouted, her voice unwavering. Clara stepped forward again, channeling the despair into strength, mixing terror with something she couldn't quite name but felt deeply, defiance, but even as she formed the words, the darkness responded like a living entity. It coiled around her, hungry and relentless. Clara gasped as shadows snatched at her ankles, dragging her down. "No. I can't go back," she cried as she fought against the pull. The whispers rose to a crescendo, drowning her in their chaos. "You belong to us now," the voices sneered, the air heavy with dread. And just as her grasp on strength began to wane, she felt a flicker of light push through the gloom, a sliver of hope amidst the encroaching despair. "I control this," Clara roared, defiance igniting anew within her, but before she could harness this spark, an anguished roar filled the air, sharper and louder than the Bigfoot's howl. It shattered the night. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she realized, the forest was not just feeding off her fear, it was fighting against itself. What lurked deeper in the woods? The thought sent icy fingers racing up her spine. The battle was not just with the beast outside, but a much larger, darker force dwelling in the depths of the Appalachian night. Clara glanced once more at the creature, fear melding with understanding. It held no true power over her. Now, faced with the unknown lurking ahead, she had to decide. Would she delve deeper, or flee back into the cabin? The shadows writhed, waiting for her to choose. Clara's heart thundered, drowning out the whispers slithering through the trees. The Bigfoot's growl vibrated in her bones, a reminder that horror was just a breath away. She was caught between shadows and the creature's predatory gaze, no more time to linger in indecision. "Show me," she shouted, grounding herself in the primal fear warping around her. If she dared to face the darkness, she could wrest power from it. The whispers intensified, the air thick with unnerving sensations. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from deep within the woods. The Bigfoot froze as if sensing something beyond Clara. Fear danced in its eyes, primal instincts emerging. Before her stood a beast terrified of another threat. A chilling realization brewed within Clara. Whatever it was larger than them both. "Breathe it in," echoed the voices, urging her to inhale the trepidation clinging to the night. Clara closed her eyes. With each breath, she consumed the dark fears swirling about, channeling them as if they were flames licking at her feet. Then, from the shadows, a low howl rumbled. The sound curled around her, deep and foreboding, like arms tightening around her throat. It felt invasive, a warning of something waiting to strike. The Bigfoot's fur bristled, the creature no longer seemed menacing, but rather an unwilling participant in a larger, grotesque game. Clara opened her eyes, catching sight of a flicker of movement. Something was slithering through the underbrush, a darkness even deeper than the night itself. Her instincts screamed to run, but she stayed rooted, fueled by a defiance that grew stronger with the terror coiling around her. The shadows churned, morphing into distinct shapes, lost souls dragging themselves from the depths of the forest, each face a mask of torment. Clara's stomach dropped. Were these the entities that haunted her? The twisted remnants of those who had succumbed to terror before her. She could see them now, reaching for her with skeletal fingers, mouths agape in silent screams. Could she face this darkness? Could she command it or merely join their ranks? "Do not be afraid," she yelled, flinging her arms wide, drawing upon the terror and pain swirling around her. "I am alive. You don't control me." Each declaration bolstered her resolve, forging a shield of fiery defiance against the encroaching depths of despair. But the shadows hissed and surged, an angry tide. They recoiled but returned violently, their whispering taunts igniting her panic. "Join us," they beckoned. "Feel what we felt." "No." Clara shrieked, instinctively stepping forward. She had taken on fear itself, the anguish of countless lost. There was power buried beneath horror, she just had to reach for it, and as she did, something snapped in the night. A piercing scream shattered the air, ripping through her confidence like a blade. The Bigfoot howled, its primal echo intertwining with the anguished cries of the shadows, creating a cacophony that threatened to consume everything. The forest trembled, branches cracking as if to surrender to the chaos. Clara felt a rush of heat envelop her, overpowering yet comforting. In this moment of chaos, she realized she could not fight alone. She needed the Bigfoot. They were both victims in this moment, bound by a common enemy lurking beyond the veil. Before she could move, the creature lunged forward, revealing a sudden rush of raw power and primal rage. Clara's breath hitched. Pain and fear collided, pushing her against the reality awaiting her, acceptance. What other entity lay hidden in the murky depths of the woods, poised to emerge like a specter? Could she trust the beast now standing beside her, ready to confront their shared enemy? Her pulse raced as the darkness surged forward with a newfound fury, urging her to decide to flee or plunge into the unknown of terror and truth. Clara's breath caught in her throat as the darkness roared closer. The wooden giants surrounding her shivered like a guilty child under judgment, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and dread. Somewhere deep within the swirling shadows, the growl of the Bigfoot turned to a low, mournful rumble, vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. This creature was caught in the same web of terror, and it was time to unite against the horror creeping ever closer. In that moment, a blinding flash illuminated the darkness, barely revealing the hulking shape of the creature to her left. Clara squinted against it, panic clawing at her chest. Eyes were everywhere, gleaming like shards of shattered glass, each pair locked on her as though she were their sole focus, their prey. They seemed to pulse with hunger and pain. She could feel their whispers creeping into her mind like cobwebs. Join us! A chorus of voices surrounded her, each one saturated with despair, entwined with memories too twisted to bear. In this forsaken place, Clara couldn't tell where the shadows ended and her fear began. Their call felt seductive, slipping past the walls she had built to protect herself, promising solace in the depths of their torment, but Clara was done submitting to fear. No! She screamed, thrusting her arms defiantly as the shadows surged closer, bidding her to yield. I will not be your pawn. The declaration ignited a spark within her. A fury no longer bound to the weight of dread, she pushed back with determination, pressing against the encroaching dark. The ground shook beneath them, a violent quake that churned the forest floor. The howling that surrounded her waned for a moment, leaving nothing but the sound of heavy breathing, her own and that of the Bigfoot beside her. The creature's eyes glimmered with a mixture of rage and confusion, as if it too were fighting between two worlds. Then, as if called forth by her newfound courage, a figure ripped through the darkness. It was a grotesque silhouette, larger than both Clara and the Bigfoot, twisting and writhing. A pair of long, clawed arms reached out, flowing like smoke into the air. The outline of what had remained hidden became clearer, and Clara's gut churned with recognition. The screams built up around her again, agitated and aggressive, as terrified souls strained against their ethereal bonds. They were not just lost souls, they were trapped, ensnared by the writhing entity. Help us, they begged. You can save us. Clara's heart raced. Save them? How? How could she save these lost spirits still tethered to the terrors of the forest? Her pulse increased with both fear and determination, straddling the line between flight and fight. The time to act was upon her. Clara took a shaky breath. If we confront it together, we can break the cycle. With that thought, she reached for the Bigfoot, its powerful frame offering an anchor against the overwhelming terror. Drawing closer, she could feel the heat radiating from its fur, a reminder that they were both a part of this desperate world. The shadows lunged with newfound rage, a tidal wave ready to engulf them. End it! They cried in unison. Join us, or perish. We won't perish. Clara declared, her voice strong now. We will fight. As their fear transitioned into blinding resolve, Clara felt the energy shift. She and the Bigfoot stood firm, their bond strengthening like an unbreakable chain against the encroaching void. Together they would face this horrifying mass of wrath and despair, but was it enough to combat it? The figure loomed closer, a mass of shadows and scream. A confrontation awaited, but at what cost? As the tidal wave of darkness struck, Clara's mind raced with one final thought: would fear triumph once again, or would they break free and expose the true nature of this malevolent force? The darkness crashed against them like a thunderous wave, swallowing Clara whole. It was colder than ice, an emptiness clawing at her skin, trying to pull her into its depths. She gasped, struggling to breathe, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, the masses of screaming souls dispersing for just a moment, revealing glimpses of twisted faces frozen in terror. Clara's instincts screamed at her to run, to escape, but she stood her ground. A flash of wild light caught the creature beside her, illuminating its muscular frame, the intensity of its gaze locking onto hers. She realized the Bigfoot was not just a beast, it was a guardian of this realm, fighting against a curse as ancient as the forests surrounding them. Together, she shouted, the sound of her voice breaking through the cacophony. As she extended her hand towards the Bigfoot, it stepped forward, defiance radiating off its powerful form. The wilderness felt alive, surging with raw energy around them. The air cracked with electric tension, the monstrous figure before them lunged, its clawed hands swirling in an arc that felt like a black hole stretching into eternity. Clara could see the insatiable hunger in its form, as though it fed on despair. They were once like you, it hissed, breath flowing like rancid smoke. Weak, failing, no. Clara cried out, her voice imbued with iron certainty. We're not weak. You can't take us. The entity shrieked at her defiance, the sound echoing like 1,000 agonized voices descending into madness. Clara braced herself, feeling the ground beneath her tremble. She grabbed the Bigfoot's arm, their bond solidifying like a beacon in the abyss. With a primal roar, the Bigfoot lunged forward, its strength driving it toward the dark figure. Clara saw the creature falter, a flicker of confusion in its eyes. Her heart raced. They were not alone in this fight. The spirits flickered around them, shadows blurring with the light of their desperation. Pull! Clara commanded as they closed the distance. She could feel the weight of countless trapped souls tethering the entity, drawing strength from their collective fear. If she could break that connection, they might finally win. Help us! The lost souls cried again, their voices intertwining with the wind, a steady crescendo that filled her with resolve. Clara felt the warmth of their hope, their desire to be freed. Focus on the light. She shouted, raising her hands, palms out to the Bigfoot. We can be their light. The Bigfoot paused for a broken second, confusion etched on its face. Then, it nodded, and together they roared against the darkness. As their voices merged, a brilliant luminescence erupted from their joined hands. The dark figure screamed. The ground quaked violently, roots breaking through the soil like angry serpents, grasping towards the beast. The shadows writhed, and Clara could almost hear the cries of anguish from the souls recoiling from the light. Fight! Clara yelled, the energy in the air pulsating. With each echo of her voice, the brightness intensified, illuminating the twisted features of the creature. Clara's heart raced, the fear in her chest slipping away, replaced by a tenacious urge to save the damned, but as the light reached out, the illusion of victory felt fragile, like glass on the brink of shattering. Clara glimpsed something beyond the figure, a portal of swirling darkness, beckoning with a whisper. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but as the shadows clawed back, hope ignited an ember deep within her. Clara's gaze flicked to the Bigfoot. We can't let it escape. Just as she said it, the entity's desperation morphed into pure fury. It lunged for them, clawed hands reaching with an unforgiving grip. The light was strong, but how long would it last against the tide of their anguish? Clara felt the pulse of dread return as she held her breath, caught between despair and the slimmest chance of salvation. Would they find a way to save the lost, or would the darkness crush them all completely? Clara felt the light surging from their hands, a brilliant beacon against the oppressive shadows. Everything around her vibrated with newfound energy. The darkness shrieked in agony, but it wasn't over yet. This is our moment. She roared, locking eyes with the Bigfoot. Its fierce gaze resonated with understanding, a silent vow that they would see this through together. The dark figure recoiled, its featureless face twisting in rage as Clara and the Bigfoot pressed forward, determined to wrench the grip of despair from the spectral souls trapped within its clutch. Each step they took brightened the air around them. The combined force of their resolve seeped into the very essence of the forest, drowning out the sinister whispers that twisted reality itself. Around them, the eerie fog of uncertainty began to lift. Clara could feel the latent power of lost souls, their hope flickering like fireflies. Fight! Let them see their freedom! She shouted into the abyss, her voice a clarion call against the tide of terror. Like a wave crashing against stone, the shadows struggled to maintain their hold, crumbling with every declaration of defiance Clara uttered. With every breath, the creature shrieked louder, a wailing lament of what it was losing. But Clara and the Bigfoot stood resolute, channeling their fear into strength. The darkness surged at them one last time, clawing for their ankles, but Clara was ready. "We break this curse tonight," she shouted, thrusting her palms forward. The light swelled, spilling over from their hands like molten gold, every ounce of hope within them concentrated into a single moment. The air crackled with energy, electric and raw. The figure howled, its shape warping under the relentless power of their combined might. It was as if the entire world held its breath. Then, with a spine-chilling roar, the entity lunged, a final act of desperation. Clara fought against the tangible pressure of fear, heart pounding wildly as she felt the warmth of the Bigfoot beside her, a huge comfort in the face of overwhelming terror. "Now!" she cried, forcing all she had into the connection they forged. Light erupted from them, exploding outward like sunrays piercing the night. The dark figure howled, a cacophony of pain resonating before dissolving into wisps that scattered across the woods. Clara could feel the spirits freed, their voices surged like an ethereal chorus, crying out as they broke free from the shackles of despair. The force of liberation burst through the forest, illuminating the trees, banishing the night. Shadows dissipated, melted into the air, leaving behind a luminescent calm, a breathing sigh of relief washing over Pine Hollow. For the first time, the sounds of the forest returned, alive and vibrant. The Bigfoot, once a looming embodiment of fear, stood tall beside Clara, its wild eyes softening with the light of dawn breaking on the horizon. Clara felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with gratitude. They had fought and won, not just for themselves but for others lost in the night, and as Clara caught her breath, she realized that the Bigfoot wasn't just a monster, it was a protector, a force bound by the same struggles that entangled her life. They exchanged a knowing glance, establishing a bond forged through shared purpose. "They won't return, not ever again," Clara whispered, the promise ringing strong as the first rays of sunlight lit up the forest floor. With the shadows gone and the forest awakening at last, Clara turned away from the spot where the dark entity had once thrived, smoothed by the warmth of the sun. She took one last glance at the Bigfoot, the beast now transformed in her eyes, before stepping forward onto the new path laid before them. "Let us go home," she said, her heart swelling with hope at the prospect of reunion. As she crossed the threshold back into Pine Hollow, Clara knew they were forever changed. She carried the burden of fear and sorrow, yet had managed to transform it, and in doing so, not only saved herself but liberated others. Today marked a new beginning, the end of an age of shadows and the dawn of light. Now, as she stepped into the embrace of her town, Clara heard the echoes of laughter and felt the warmth of family once more. Her children awaited her, shining like beacons, reminding her why every fight was worth it. Gratefulness flooded her heart as memories of the trials they faced melded with visions of a brighter future. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. Clara understood now, it wasn't just about battling fear, it was about embracing love, hope, and unity to conquer even the mightiest shadows. As they reunited, Clara promised herself and the town she loved that she would always keep the light alive. They had faced the nightmare that had haunted Pine Hollow, and together, they would cultivate the newfound warmth burning in their hearts, ensuring the darkness never returned. She turned to see the Bigfoot watching from the tree-line, a silent guardian. Clara smiled, understanding their bond would forever connect them, an unspoken vow of protection through the unknown. With renewed strength, she took a deep breath, moving forward toward the home she fought to reclaim. And as the sun climbed higher, illuminating all of Pine Hollow, Clara knew this was truly only the beginning. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now, your support is crucial and it fuels everything we create. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this dramatic ending. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Show your support, join the community, and remember, only true fans understand the importance of standing together.